In this one, we're making this werewolf character. It's the final model in the spooky character series I've been doing for October, so let me know what other videos you'd like to see. If you want to check out this scene that I made, including the rigged character, you can find that on my Patreon, along with all of the other characters that I've been making this month. Here's a quick summary of what I'll cover. We'll start with modeling all of the body parts. The head and the hands are using a box modeling workflow, but a large portion of this character is using the skin modifier. Then we'll add some color and do a small amount of texture painting on the head. And finally, we'll add some hair particles for the arms and the chest. Alright, let's get started. So here we are, I'm using Blender 2.93 for this one. And we'll just get started with the head. So for this, I'll add in a cube. I'm also gonna change my matte cap to this one right here. And I'll add a subdivision surface modifier with Control 2 right there. You can see we have it over here when you go to the modifier properties panel. So I'll just drag this up here and scale it down a little. It's going to be close to 2 meters tall, and I'll just apply the scale when I have it where I want it. So I also want to add in a mirror modifier and just make sure it's above the subdivision surface. I'll tab into edit mode. I'll start just by adding a slice in the middle, delete half, so that our mirror modifier is actually doing its thing. And I'll just get started with the box modeling. So I know we want our character to have like a snout, so I'll add a loop cut right here and across this way so that we have this face in the front that I can extrude from like that. You can see, oh, apparently that didn't work. So I have to turn clipping on for this, and now when I extrude it, it should be connected. And we can just hold Y, extrude it just on the Y axis like that. So I'm just going to go into X-ray mode with Alt-Z, or this button up here, and just start pulling some points around. I know this should have a slight point to it to have the typical like dog snout type of look. Make sure to check it from all angles. You can see right here it's a little boxy if you look from the front. So when we get a shape that we think is looking pretty good and we want to go in and add some extra detail, basically what I'll do is just duplicate this in case I want to go back. Then I'll hide it, take this one, and then I'll go over to the subdivisions right here and see like how many I think I want to be editing. So this might be enough geometry to make the ears. We'll try it with just one right here, and then we just want to apply both of these. You have to apply both of them or else there will be a seam in the middle from the mirror modifier. And we're actually going to add the mirror modifier back in once we apply everything. So then we just have to go in here and delete half so that it's working properly. I mean, you can also bisect it too, but I usually just delete everything. So now we have that same shape. And if we want to smooth it out again, we just add another subdivision surface on top like that. But we have more to work with now over here. So if I want, I can take this, pull it in to make it a little sharper. Pull this forward just to create a more dramatic brow right there. You know, you can come in and just basically sharpen things up however you think it should look. I want the snout to be pretty pointy like that. Pretty dramatic. And to make the ears, I'm just going to select a few of these faces right here. So make sure you're in face select for that. Let's see, which ones do I want? Maybe here. So now I can just extrude, hit Z to go straight up like that. And now we have some ears. I'll just scale those on the Y like that. And I can scale them on the X also. You can rotate them around a little if you want to change the shape slightly. So I'll rotate them first like this so they're a little flatter. Then you can rotate them on the X, give them a little point. From the side, I like to pull them forward a little so that it's like kind of going straight up over here and we have the slope going in the back. You can also make these wider, closer to the middle, by selecting this right here and just hitting G twice. You can slide that in, or you could have just included this face right here. That would have been fine too. You can change the shape if you want, stick it out a little more. So this is looking pretty good. Obviously, if you want to, you can come in here, add some loops, and you know, change the shape if you want. Another thing I want to do is add some spiky pieces of fur over here. So I think what I would like to do, and you can do this a few different ways, but the way I like to do it, I can just select these ones right here. Alt-E, extrude individual faces, scale them down with individual origins. You know, you can also, you want to clean these up, select them individually so you can be a little more deliberate with the shapes. You know, make sure to check this from all angles too. You know, it takes some trial and error, so just do this until you think it actually looks the way that you want. And when you shade it smooth, right click shade smooth. This is what it looks like now. It's looking a little more wolf-like. So I think I'll be done with that for now. Just rename that head, and we can get started on the eyes, which is going to be as easy as it can possibly get. Just add in a cube. I'll move this up and scale it down, put it where I want it, bring it in the front. Hit Control 2. Now it's has a subdivision surface modifier right there. I'll add a mirror modifier, and I'll choose the head as the mirror object like that. When you have this where you want and the right size, just hit Control A and apply the scale. You can also come in here and push some of these around to create more of like an eye socket. You can just pull these in slightly like that. And you can see now it's not clipping with our eye. It looks a little better. I'll take this, just duplicate it with Shift D, move it up like that, go into edit mode. I'm just gonna select the front face, hit Control I. It's just going to invert the selection, and then I'll delete all of those faces. So we just have this single one right here. Push it back, and this is gonna be our eyebrow. So we can add a solidify modifier right here. I'll just do that, put that at the very top. Tell it how much thickness to have. I'll just set this to 0, so it's right in the middle. And we can make it however thick we want. And if you want it to be a little more boxy, you can just add a bevel. Just put that before subdivision surface. And you have to make this pretty small. And you can see, like at this range right in the beginning, if you make it really small, it's going to be very square. You can turn up the segments to make it even more sharp. Now I'll just, you know, push these around, shape them a little bit. Let's add a few loop cuts. I'll add 2 loop cuts like that. These are going to be kind of like angry eyebrows, I guess. So I'll take this, move it up like that. You can scale them in slightly, make them flare at the end and maybe at the beginning too. Getting some weird geometry going on right here for some reason. I think instead what I'll do is turn this to simple and then add a smooth modifier. Or instead, I know I'm doing too many things right here, I can just add a bevel modifier like that. Just turn the bevels up a little more and make this a little smaller. And if you don't like this in here, you can change these around to patch or arc. I think arc is the one that looks good in this case anyway. And I can place it that way so it's kind of conforming to the face a little better. For the body, I'll be using the skin modifier technique that I show in a lot of my videos. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on that, you can check that out here. So I'll just add in a plane with Shift A, tab into edit mode, and collapse that with M. Just select everything, hit M to collapse. So we have a single vert right here, and we can put it wherever we want, but I'm just gonna drag it up right here and add a few modifiers. The mirror modifier, the skin modifier, and subdivision surface. So the mirror modifier, you know what that does, it's just mirroring it. Skin modifier is creating this geometry, it's making it more solid, and then the subdivision surface is just smoothing it out like that. So now we can select this point. You gotta make sure you're in vertex select for this. You can select this point, scale it up and down with Control A, extrude it upward like this. I'll add in a loop with Control R, and we just wanna start getting a shape for our torso right here. So I'm just gonna scale this up pretty big, maybe extrude this down on the Z like that. We're gonna have kind of like a big like muscle man cartoony body. So I was thinking like wide shoulders, like a big box chest. So right here we can bring this out. This is going to be where our shoulder is, and you can just kind of play around with this until you get some shapes that you like. You can see from the side it's flattening out like a cobra or something like that. From this point right here, just extrude outward also. So this is how you can create a thicker, more broad chest. So if you hit N to open up this side panel, you have these radius X and radius Y right here. Instead of having like an equal radius, you can make it wider or slimmer or whatever. So you can do that to make the chest a little more flat or wide like that. You gotta be careful and play around with it because it does get a little glitchy. I want to create a little neck too. I want the neck to be coming in from like the back of the head right here, so there's like a slight hunch. You can create more of a hunch by extruding out the back the same way we did with the chest right here. And this will just add more mass back here. And I'll give the werewolf a little bit of a belly, but I'm trying to create like a nice good curve for the back also. So next I want to create an arm, so I'll just grab this vert that has the root attached to it, which is that circle right there. You can duplicate that. These aren't going to be actually attached to the body. It'll be like a separate piece. So I'll just make it a separate object. With this selected, you can hit P and separate by selection. And now go back into object mode and you can select this. You can see in object mode, it's a separate piece also. And if the mirror modifier isn't working, you gotta make sure the origin is in the center. Otherwise, just select a mirror object that is already in the center, like the head. And now when you move this in object mode, it'll work regardless of where the origin point is. So now we can place this where we want. I just made it a separate piece because when I was testing it out, I like the control of being able to change where it's coming out and it doesn't affect the shape of the body nearly as much. So you can put this wherever you want and just start extruding. So I wanted a pretty skinny bicep with big forearms. I thought it was like a funny look, kind of like Popeye. What I like to do is kind of figure out how long I want the arms to be. And these are going to be pretty long, but you got to remember that we're going to make hands too. So don't make them too long. Hands are going to be big. So I'll put those right around here. Put this in here. That's going to be like where our elbow is. I'll add another spot in here and scale that up. And this is just keeping it sharp. You see when I get rid of that, it just turns into like a weird pod. Scale this down on the y-axis to make it a little flatter. You can check from the top to see if we're liking the shape. If you want, you can add some muscle in here by putting a loop and scaling this up. You know, move it around to create different shapes. So this is our arm now. Got to keep track of everything that we're making because we're making a lot of stuff. And we'll make the legs next. So I'm also going to use a skin modifier for this. So I'll just duplicate this, basically do the same thing that we did before, where with this selected, you hit P and separate by selection. And then you can go back into object mode and select that. Now we have a separate object for our legs. So for this to work best, I basically kept everything all on one axis and just worked from the side. I'll show you what I mean. Basically, I'm just going to scale this down. So I hit 3, so I'm looking from the side, and I'll just start creating things like that. So this is going to be like our basic leg shape right here. It's kind of like a human leg, except the heel is way up here, and this is our knee. And this would be like where our toes start. If you make this flat or wide like that, and you start moving it sideways, you're going to see that it's not laying flat really anymore. Yeah, I think it works best when you keep everything flat facing like this, and then when you want to rotate it, you can rotate it in object mode, except it works better when you set the mirror object to like the head or something. So when you rotate it, you can get motion like that. So let's actually make some of these shapes look better. So I want this to start off thick, except when I scale things up, I'm just going to try to scale them up. What is it? On the Y, so that they're a little flatter. We'll add another loop in here and scale that up so we have a little more roundness. And if you think these have too much of like a kink right here, you can bevel them with Control-Shift-B and then just select these. And if you're in median point for your pivot point, you can scale them apart from each other like that to create some more roundness. This is helpful for if you want to scale them up at all like that. You don't want them to be intersecting too much or clipping into each other. So I like to bevel them slightly and then scale them apart like that. And the shapes just look a little better sometimes. Sometimes I like to scale them on the X and the Y individually just to have a little more control. It's looking pretty good. If we want, we can create some toes right here. I want to move the root. So I'll just select that top one and mark root because I don't want the root to be at the toes. Go right about here, and this is basically going to be like the wrist of our foot, which I don't know if that makes any sense. Start extruding from here. So I'll extrude on the y-axis. That's going to be our first toe. So we'll just scale that down, and I'll duplicate this, move it to the side, duplicate again, move it to the side. We'll just have 3 toes, and I'll just select these 2 and hit F. We'll do that for both. Bring that back. and we can extrude that out again. So this is what we have right now. I'll select this, you scale it up quite a bit, and you can see at a certain point it will merge like that. You know, push this back, and we can scale these up. These aren't symmetrical, so I'll just try to get them close. And it is looking a little flat, so I'll just select these and scale them on the X? No, on the Y. Another thing we can do is right-click these and subdivide to add these in the middle, pull them up. Now we have some toes right there. Obviously, you can mess around with these shapes as much as you want. You could even pull these apart from each other like that, scale them up more, something like that, so they don't look as like straightforward. I think what I'll do is change the origin point to right here. So I'll hit Shift S with that selected and cursor to selected. And then in object mode, you can just select your leg, right click, set origin to 3D cursor. Now, when we rotate it, it rotates from the top of the thigh right there where you would expect. And if you want to put your 3D cursor back in the middle, you can just hit Shift S again, cursor to world origin right here. So now I can put this in place and rotate it a little. And this is in object mode, so we're not really messing with anything here. And it looks like this isn't actually flat. Just select the toes and pull it down until it's at the same level as the rest of the foot. For the tail, I'll use the same technique. I'll just grab the one from our body, this root right here, duplicate it, and I'll separate it with P. So I'll just put that in place, and here's how I'll do it. I'll just extrude it outward like this. And I'll add some loops with Control R, but I want to add a few, so I'll use the scroll wheel like this. What I'll do is scale all of these up, go to proportional editing right here. We'll try changing it to sharp, and I'll select right here and scale that down. You can change the area of influence like this. So I can scale this one at the end down as far as we want, and then we can do it from the other end and just change the fall off again until it's like sharp. Yeah, I want to put the origin point at the tip of the tail. Select that point, Shift S, cursor to selected, right click in object mode, set origin to 3D cursor, like that. We can add a simple deform, and I'll make that bend like this. So I'll change my pivot point, period, active element. So I'll select all of these right here, and then this one last, and now it'll rotate from that point. So I'll rotate that by 90 degrees. Then I can rotate it by 90 degrees, negative 90 degrees, I guess, in object mode. And now we can use this to control tightly it is curling, I guess. You can just kind of move things up with proportional editing like that. I'll just select these and extrude them. I don't want those edges there, so I can just delete the edges. And we can scale these down. You have to play with them so they don't get glitchy. You might have to move them a little closer to the tail so that they merge. So that's if you want to make it spiky. You could also just apply the skin modifier and all that, and then just start extruding it. So for the hands, I would normally use the skin modifier, but I wanted to make the hands extra wide for this. So I'll do them differently, and I'll start with plane right here, and I'll just put that into place. We can add a mirror modifier and select the head as the mirror object so that it actually mirrors to the other side. And then in edit mode, I'll just scale that down. So I'm using a plane so that we don't have to worry about pushing points through each other. You don't really have to use X-ray mode for this if you don't want to. And then we'll add some thickness after. I just want to add one loop in the middle, and we'll start creating a basic palm shape. Extrude this out, and this will be the wrist right here. And I want the hand to be pretty wide. I want it to be like a big hand. So you can just select that edge and extrude it like that. We'll extrude it again. We'll just have two for now, 2 segments. This will be our thumb. Then I'll add enough loops for 4 fingers, if you want 4 fingers. Pull these down just to make it a little more round like that. And I'll do the same thing up here. Extrude this outward on the x-axis like that for our fingers. And if you want to split these apart, you can just select these in the middle, right click, and edge split, wherever it is, edge split right here. And now you should be able to hit period and change your pivot point to individual origins. And when you scale this down, they'll actually be separated. I'll change it back now. You can scale these apart. And if you want, you can change the length of these however you like. So when you have the proportions the way you want, we can just select everything and extrude that downward. I want to add in the subdivision surface modifier to smooth it out. and we can start adding some joints and messing around with the thickness of certain parts. I'll add in a few loops right here. It's going to be for the knuckles. I want to add more than just 2 for the knuckles. I want to add 5 like that. That way I can scale up parts between the knuckles. So I can select all these spots right here and like pull them down. And now we have some like creases between the fingers. So I'll do that for all of them. And you can see down over here in the corner how many cuts there are, or you can just Control R and then hit type in 5 like that. And that might save you some time. So I'll just select all of these and move them with G twice, a little closer to the knuckle like that. So now I can just start selecting loops down here, and I'll just pull them down slightly like that. You know, this can get kind of tedious, but it's not that bad. I'll pull these up a little. And if you want, you can pull these ones up for the knuckles like that. I am going to add another loop cut right here for the knuckles. I'll select this and hit Control and left click, and it'll just find the shortest path. Now I can pull this down like that. So we're starting to define some shapes now for our palm. We're just adding some roundness to the hand by pulling some of these loops. I can add another loop cut right here and get a little more specific. And on the other side, we can pull these up for our knuckles too. But before I do that, I'll add a loop between each of our fingers right here. Pull these forward, unless you want to keep these pretty square, which is also fine. I feel like that would look pretty good if you're trying to make big hands. So the reason I did that is so we can just select the center of each knuckle right here and pull that up. Shift and left click to select separate parts, and then Control and left click to select the shortest path, like that. So it's a little rounder now, not as boxy, I guess. I'll add another loop right there, and we can actually change the shape of the knuckle a little. Select this loop and see if proportional editing helps with that. I'll just scale it on the Z-axis. That actually helped quite a bit. So I could spend a really long time trying to make this look better, but I'm just going to be done with it. One thing that is related to the hands is the nails. So I do want to have some like pretty crazy talons going on. I'll just grab one of these faces and duplicate it and pull it out. I can scale that on the X by 0 to flatten it out. And I'll just kind of flatten this in every direction. Scale that on the Z by 0 right here. Scale that on the Y by 0, and we can just extrude it outward and scale it down. Another loop right here. So now I can select this and pull it down to create a little curvature. So when you have it looking good, I'll just line it up over here. I think it should be big, pretty big. Look from the side to see if it looks good. So now we can just duplicate it across and rotate it so it's looking good, and grab this one because I know this one is unaltered. I didn't rotate it at all. So I'll rotate that on the X by 90 degrees. And if you want to be done with it, this could be it for the modeling, but I want to add some shorts. So I'll add some jean shorts. So the way I'll do this is I'll start with a cube, and I want to add a mirror modifier, and I'll add a subdivision surface with Control 2. So I'll go into edit mode now and put this in place like that. And I want to cut it in half. So I'll add a loop right there and then cut it in half like that. And I'll delete the top because the top will be open. Let's see, right about there. I'll just try to get this to wrap around our body. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to adjust this quite a bit. So make sure clipping is off for this. So when we extrude, there is a face in the middle like that. And we should be able to pull it apart like that for the legs. And then we can delete those faces at the bottom. So now it should be open. And we can continue lining this up so that it wraps around our legs. I'll add a loop right here so we can round it out. I'm just trying to get this to conform to the body a little better. Okay, so I think that's good for our shorts, but I do want some like pockets hanging out because these are going to be like cut off short jean shorts. I'm just going to bring in a plane right here and line it up. Could twist it around on the Z-axis so it's not clipping through the leg as much. And I'm actually going to separate this with P So then we can add solidify. I'll just put that before the subdivision surface. And for this, we can add a solidify also. I'm actually going to apply the mirror and the subdivision surface, and then I'll add another subdivision surface right here and another mirror. It seems a little weird, but I just want to be able to come in here and actually edit the mesh with a little more detail. I'll add the solidify first so it rounds the edges a little. Delete half of these. So for the bottom that's cut off, what is it? Yeah, that's what it is. Control Alt left click, select all of these edges right here, and I'll just right click, edge split. And now it looks like they're a little more torn up. You can select one edge right here, shift select the other, and then Control Shift plus. It will continue that selection all the way around. You can scale those down with individual origins like that. Add like a thing in the front for like the fly. What I'll do is hit I to inset and I again, so it's not individual, and then B, and that will make it so it's in the middle. Pull it in like that. Now I should be able to select these and extrude them outward to create kind of like a fly. I'll use this part in the front for a button also. Basically do the same thing. Select that face, I. First what I'll do is hit N and turn mean crease all the way up, and then I'll extrude it, and then I'll turn mean crease down. So we have like kind of a sharp edge for the bottom of the button. And obviously you can come in here and, you know, move the shapes around if you want it to be shaped a little differently. So we can select a few for belt loops. Alt E, extrude faces along normals. And I want to create kind of like a pocket. So we'll do that right here. I'll just select some edges. I can bevel them with Control B, and I'll extrude those outward slightly. So now it looks kind of like we have some pockets. I mean, we could add a little hole for the tail. We just delete these faces. It'll create a little hole for the tail, but honestly, I think it's fine. It's not going to bother me too much. And you don't have to think about the logistics of how to wear shorts with a tail. All right, so next we're gonna add a few colors. So anything made with the skin modifier, we have to apply. So if you think you might want to adjust this, I recommend just like duplicating it first and then hiding it like that, so you have one that's not applied. So I'm just gonna run through now and just apply this, apply the mirror and the skin. I'll apply the subdivision. Same thing over here, just apply it starting from the top. Do the same for the legs. I'll leave the subdivision surface, and I have to apply the tail also. Okay, so we'll go into the shading tab now. I'll just select everything, right click and shade smooth. I'll just select the body and then select everything else with A and come up here, add a new material. I'll just name this Werewolf, hit Control L and link materials. Now we should be able to change the material and it will affect all of the objects. So I'll be using a palette for the color, just so I don't have to make a bunch of different materials. If you want to download the palette that I'm using, you can get it for free on Gumroad. There's a link in the description. So I'll just add in an image texture right here. You want to load in the palette that you download. I already have mine loaded in right here. And you can plug the color into the base color right here. And I'll change this from linear to closest. So everything that was made with the skin modifier needs to be unwrapped still. So select everything made with the skin modifier, the legs, tail, body, arms, all that. Go into edit mode, select everything, hit U, and then unwrap. And we can start setting up our colors. To do that, just go over to, where is it? UV editor, right here. And I just want to make sure that I'm in look dev for this so we can actually see the colors. So now we can just select everything over here with A, tab into edit mode, select everything again. And then when you're over here, you can scale this down, and if you scale it down small enough, just by hitting 0, it'll turn into a single point like that. And then you can move that around to choose colors. So I'll just put everything up to white for now, so it's blank. And now all you have to do is just select things over here, go into edit mode, and then you can drag this around and change the color with G. So I'll make everything brown like that. Do the same thing for the hands. I'm going to go through and just select each of the nails with L, and I'll make those black. Do the same thing for the legs and the tail. You can select multiple things at the same time if you want to, which can help speed things up sometimes. Could also put the nails on the feet if you want. I think I'll leave the pockets white, and I'll select these and make them like a jeans color, so maybe something like this, a little lighter, so it contrasts the dark brown right there. The eyes I'll make red, and the eyebrows I'll make black. So we want to color our nose, but you can see if I change it in here by selecting the face, dragging this around, like you can do that, but it looks a little weird. It's just kind of a square, so it's a little more complicated, but we could also texture paint this, but we have to do a few things first. So I'll go over to shading right here, and I'll create a new texture by selecting the head and then hitting this button right here. So now we can bring in a UV map, and I'll use UV map for this. We're gonna have to create a second UV map. So I'll create a second one, and I'll name this head, like that. So we can plug the regular UV map into our palette right here, and we can create a separate one. I'll just create a new one, make this 2048. I'll name this Werewolf head. And the color I want to make transparent, like that. Make sure you have alpha selected. So now we have this new one, and we want to use a different UV map with it. So I just have to select a different UV map right there, plug it in, and we want to mix between these two. So I'll add in a mix RGB, and I'll plug the alpha into the factor right here. If the color is still working, then you know you plugged it into the right color slot. See, if we swap it, it'll turn gray. And that's because the transparency of this one is controlling which one to choose. So just make sure that the color is looking correct when you do it this way. So this will allow us to go back to the UV editor and unwrap our head a little better. So we can come over here to UV maps and select this one, and we can unwrap it differently. So I'll hit U and Smart UV project, like that. And this is what we have right now. I'll just make the island margin a little bigger, so 0.01. And this should allow us to texture paint. So we can go over to texture paint. I'll just make sure I'm in look dev for this so we can actually see the color. We can select a color up here. If you want, you can change the fall off. I'll change this to something a little sharper, maybe this one, the spherical one. And you can just draw your nose on. This isn't the right color because if you go into shading, I didn't plug the color in right here. Now we can go back over to the texture paint. You can hit F to change the size of your brush. So we can come in here now and just draw our nose on like that. And I'm just using a, oh my God. And I'm just using a mouse for this. I'm not using a tablet or anything. And I think I want to make some darker spots under the eyes also. So I'll change this fall off to something softer like that. I'll just scale this up quite a bit. Start creating some dark areas around the eyes. I think that looks pretty good. I also want the roughness to be up a little higher. I'll change that to like 0.8 or something for all of these. Also make sure that when you're done drawing for your nose and your eyes and all that, you just want to make sure that you save the image here. Otherwise, when you open your file back up, you'll notice that this is going to be gone. Another thing we can do is add some particles for the fur. Select the body for this one. Come over here to particle settings, press plus, change it to hair. It's going to go crazy because the hair length is 4 meters for some reason. I'll change that to like 0.1, and I'll change this down to something like 250, maybe even 100. It doesn't have to be a lot. Now a thing we can do is go down to vertex groups, and we can actually add a vertex group to control like how long and dense the hair is. We need to add a vertex group. So I'll add one in here called hair. And now we can select that for the density and for the length. And to control where we want it to be, we can go into weight painting mode and just make sure that you have this one selected. I mean, if you have multiples, then you want to make sure that you have the right one selected. If you want to know like where each vertex is, you can turn on wireframe, and that will, help you figure out where you're actually supposed to draw. Right now, this isn't symmetrical, and we want it to be. We can come over here. It's up here to Active Tool and Workplace Settings. Go down to Symmetry and turn on X Mirror. So yeah, then you can just start drawing. So I'll start doing that for just like a patch right there. You can change the weight and all that. And go back into Object Mode now. If you're using Eevee, you can come up here to Render Properties. Go down to Hair and change this from Strand to Strip. And you can see we actually have a little more shape now. Or if you want there to be more hair without adding more particles, what you can do is come over to your hair, go down to Children and Interpolated. And right here you have the display amount and the render amount. So if you like the way it looks in the viewport, you want to make sure that these are set the same, or else when you render it, it's going to look a little different. I like to turn up the clumping for this also. I'll just turn it up almost all the way. And if you want, you can turn on hair dynamics. And now when you press play, you'll see that it actually sags like that. If you want it to not fall down too far, you can turn the pin goal strength up to like 0.1. And you can see it'll straighten back out a little. So I like the way this looks, and I want to add some on the forearms too. So I can just come over here and add this in and select a hair patch like that. And we'll do the same thing with the vertex group. So I'll add one called hair, and then we just have to add it in over here with the particles. And then we just have to go into weight painting and decide where we want it to be. I want to come over here to symmetry and turn on X mirror. So if you want to be able to paint through your objects all the way to the back, you have to turn off front faces only under advanced, and then under fall off, you can turn on projected. Then it should let you actually paint through your objects. You can see when I turn around, it's actually going through to the other side, which is pretty cool. So I'll just paint some of this on, and then we can go up to weights and smooth, and this allows us to smooth it a little like that. And you can expand and contract a little too if you want to change that up. So I think for the arms, I want them to be a little fuzzier, so I'll turn the children up. So I have the number of particles set to 250, and I have the number of children set to 10 right now. And you can see when we go into look dev, it should just match the material of wherever it's coming out of. All right, that's it for this one. Once again, you can find all of the project files on Patreon. This is the last spooky character I had planned for October, so make sure to let me know what other videos you want to see. I'd like to thank my patrons for their support. This is my first month over there, and I'm really grateful for how well it's gone. With their help, I was able to stick to my goal of donating to an organization that helps fight for environmental justice. This month we donated to the NRDC, and as new people join my Patreon, we'll be able to donate even more. So if you want to be part of that, make sure to check the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.